Providence was in there for a long time, so.
The city where you
Every city. Really? I was there for almost a decade.
Who is it now?
His name is Justin. Yeah.
Larry Ander was before me.
Oh, he's before you.
He was there for 15 years.
He was their first city manager. Then when he retired, I was hired.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing all right.
Jeannie, you're walking good.
I worked in
County
Give it a
government
shot.
in Southern California, actually. I worked for San Bernardino County.
Oh, okay.
I was there for 15 years.
There's a cord on the floor.
Is that home down there?
That's where I was born and raised.
Southern California.
I don't know what it's related to.
And then Ontario. Valley.
Lived in Burbank for a while.
Lost in the carpet.
Accounting firm.
This carpet,
I love
you can't see things that are
It's great weather. Can wear shorts and a t-shirt all year round.
every day.
It's too many people.
Yeah, yeah.
And lines for.
That was the main reason why.
Exactly.
So crowded. My friends kept trying to get away from it. We moved inland from Orange County. A little farther. We moved to this town, Apple Valley, back in the late 80s.
Getting away from the
Growth in greater Los Angeles basin. I moved there in a small rural Logan-Cache valley.
One of you greeted me this morning with the notion that we had a interesting agenda, and they held up the letter from Union Pacific. So we'll dive in, and we welcome you for being here. We'll begin by asking for a motion to approve the minutes as they've been provided.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
It's been moved and second. We approve the minutes from the June 2nd meeting. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
That passes. Lee, tell us what you've been doing.
Okay. Rather than to do a report like I normally do, I have a letter of compliance from our 139 inspection, and I figured by the time I run through this, my allotted time would be over. So that's what we are going to discuss, is the letter of non-compliance. Really, they call it a letter of compliance, but it's, every item on it is item of non-compliance. So we'll just dive right into that. Item number one, the Arf Vehicle Readiness. Everything that we were in non-compliant on this item has been corrected. We did the flow test on the truck for the triple F foam, and we also sent them a letter of our maintenance records, things that have been done on that truck as far as changing the oil and the filters in it, and other maintenance items that we had to address last year on that truck. So they have a copy of that, and they also have a copy of the test results from the flowage of the turrets. So everything's taken care of on that item. Item number two, paved areas. Basically, I took care of those items while during the inspection. They were very minor. Mainly because we put millings down on the side of the runway when we did the overlay project. From time to time, some of those millings find their way right along the edge there, and you can't always keep them off the edge. So during the routine inspections, you just sweep them off. So that's what I did while the inspection was being done.
Can we go up a little bit?
Okay,
up this way or
Well,
down?
so we can see.
number
what you're talking
two.
about.
Oh, number two. Sorry about that.
So that has been taken care of. Also, let me see, okay, that take care of that. Item number 3, the safety areas. There was some wooden stakes that were left over from the surveyors in conjunction with the overlay project, and I removed them. I don't know why they consider them a non-frangible object. They break if you just touch them lightly, but anyway, they've been removed. So we're in compliance with the non-frangible items. There was some settling under some of the new taxiway signs, and it was a lip on the concrete pad that was greater than 2 inches. So I hauled some millings out there and filled that in. That item has been taken care of. The picture, Jeannie, right there. So those concrete pads, now the surface right around them come right up to the level of the concrete. That item has been taken care of. And the bottom picture of B, that sign number B, that was another one that we had to.
And that was the offending survey stake, right?
Yeah, and those are the offending survey stakes, which they've been removed. Item number 4, signs. This is something that is we're going to have to probably include in a capital improvement project. Both number 4 and number 5. Starting off with this taxiway Alpha 1, she did not like the direction the arrows were pointing. She said they should be a direct 90-degree angle, not a 45. So those panels will have to be changed to show a 45-degree arrow instead of or a 90-degree arrow instead of a 45. Also, in conjunction with these older signs, there is a lot of fading going on with the signs, and the panels, actually the lamination is coming away on some of them. So either we're going to have to change the panels on these signs or replace the signs, and frankly, the signs are rather old signs. They've been there a long time, and from time to time we have to have Cache Valley Electric come out and do update maintenance on them. So I know that's going to be the board's call, what they want to do, whether they want to just replace the panels or they want to replace all these old signs. We have basically 4 styles of signs out at the airport now, which means we have to keep lamps and light bulbs for a variety of signs, where it would probably be in the best interest to just go with the LumiCurve on all the signs, so we have a standard sign and we don't have to have an inventory of all these different bulbs to put in the signs when they go out. So anyway, that's going to be the board's decision on how they want to move forward on complying with these old signs. Going on to item number 6, marking and maintenance. If you scroll down to the picture, Janine, right there, this is an item that's really under warranty with the overlay project, because when they put the edge markings down on the runway, they didn't completely clean the dirt. And Carl Rollins, who was the on-site engineer, noted that in his notes that dirt should have been cleaned off properly. Actually, it didn't allow the paint to adhere to the pavement, and so there was an air pocket under there, and it pulled up. I did have a paint crew out there. We were doing the 1028 fog seal project, so we had a painting crew, and I was able to get them to go out there and scrape this area off and get all the paint that was coming up off of the asphalt, and then we repainted it. But there's other areas the edge marking where I've noticed we have the same problem. So this might be something that we're going to have to address with Staker Parsons to rectify this problem, because it's going to show up next year during the inspection too. But right now, this area was repainted, scraped off. I took a picture of it so I could send it to our cert inspector, and we're in compliance for now. But it won't remain that way. Also, she mentioned the center line on Taxiway Alpha. We were written up the year before, and we had already planned on putting that center line down when we did the fog seal on 10/28, and I told her, if you just wait one more week, that'll be taken care of. But you know how inspectors are; they write you up on it anyway. So we got written up on it, but that center line's been taken care of. It was painted the following week. Moving on to number 7. This is another item that I don't know how to respond to this one. They don't like our snow removal equipment. They say it's too old, unreliable. They don't like the fact that we're the only airport, 139 airport in their system that doesn't have a high-speed broom. This will be an expensive item, updating the snow removal equipment. But I guess we don't have to do it. We just have to have a plan in place to show her by October. So I've already notified Armstrong. Both the signage and the snow removal are going to be our expensive items, and I guess that's to be determined how we're going to handle that. I did tell her, although the blower was as old as she noted, 50 years old, it had been rebuilt. We bought that from Ogden a few years back, and it's been a very reliable snow blower. Can't say that for the 2 trucks, but the snow blower has been reliable, and I guess that appeased her somewhat, but she still didn't like our equipment being that old. Item number 8, the ARF training. We were non-compliant with 3 of our firemen who were a month late in doing their airport familiarization training. The FAA is very stickler that we meet these anniversary dates, and so they're just waiting to find somewhere where you've missed your anniversary date, and they write you up on it. Likewise with your daily inspections. They go through every one of our daily inspections for a year. I sit down and I don't know how long it takes, but they go through every inspection every day for a year. And if you have a day where you had to issue a NOTAM, they make me go into the system and pull up that NOTAM and make sure that NOTAM matches with what I've written on that report. So they're stickler for training, they're stickler for being in compliance with our inspections and follow-up inspections, which I'll talk about later. So anyway, the 3 people who were non-compliant, they weren't compliant because they did their training, but they were a month late. So we got written up on it, but they were current at that time. The next items on 9 pertain to our mobile fuelers at the airport and also the fuel farm. There was numerous items that the trucks were written up on, and then we had a couple with the fuel farm. Maybe if you could just go to the pictures, Janine. These are some of the items that they noted with the trucks. Basically just keeping oil spills clear from different parts of the truck. Some of the placards were not to her suiting, and then some oil spills underneath the vehicles. I know Leading Edge has worked to correct those problems. I don't know if they've taken care of the placards that are missing on the fuel farm tanks, and also the sign. That emergency shutoff sign was not 7 foot high, and it was not large enough. So those are still two items that we got to address with the fuel farm. Next item, pedestrian and ground vehicle training. I don't know how to respond to this one. The only people that was not trained to meet our inspectors' liking was the CERT people who are FAA personnel to come out and maintain our ILS system. They requested about 2 years ago that I send them the training, and they do it in-house at their office in Salt Lake. But because they do not come out and physically drive the airport with me and go over these items, they're non-compliant. Well, I can't get them to come out, so I don't know. I guess this is something that we're dealing with one FAA office that is basically not accepting another FAA's way of doing things, FAA's branch way of doing things. So we'll try to work with them, see if we can't get them to show up. But that requires probably 7 to 10 of their people to come out and do that training, where it was much easier for me to just send off the curriculum to them and have them do it at their home office. And then, of course, COVID run its course, and FAA personnel weren't going anywhere. So
Lee, you say you've indicated that was corrected. What did you do?
it has not been corrected because I can't get the FAA technicians to come out and actually all of them at one time and go through a training course.
Okay.
Where they will do it if I just send them the training curriculum and they do it there, but since they're not at the airport getting familiarized with the things that's on that training curriculum, that they're non-compliant.
Do they have to do that for every airport?
Every airport, yes. Or every airport that the CERT inspector now requires them to do so. These CERT inspectors, they vary. So this is the first time that we've ever been, approached by being non-compliant with their own staff not coming to the airport and doing hands-on training.
The correction date on that form was the date that she put down that it had.
Well, that's the anniversary date that they were supposed to have it done. But obviously they didn't meet that anniversary date. But all of our personnel at the airport that gained access to the movement area we were all compliant with the training. Then the last page is just some items that were mentioned that we might want to look into. They give us this last page. It's kind of just a guideline for us. But if we don't move on this, then next year they become a discrepancy, just from past experience. So one item was documenting specialized airport self-inspections. That is, if we have to do an additional daily inspection due to construction or in the wintertime due to conditions changing. They want better documentation of these follow-up inspections. It's kind of hard for a one-man person to always have to leave what he's doing and go fill out a form every time you do a follow-up inspection. A lot of times in the winter, when I have to change the status of our surface condition on the runway, rather than go park the truck when it changes, I'll just phone the conditions into Flight Center, and then they'll issue the updated NOTAM. So, this is kind of a hassle to have to stop what you're doing and go fill out a form every time the conditions might change at the airport. But just to be aware, they're noticing that we are not filling out those extra inspections. right now, we're only required to do one daily inspection and every week do one night inspection. But this is new to me that we have to do multiple inspections when everything changes. One item we're probably going to have to address is the bay door to the Arf building. It was noted that it's the operator for that door is totally electric, and if the power was to go out, how would we get the door open? So we might have to put a chain hoist that overrides the electric system so that we can manually open that door. And the emergency fuel shutoff on our fuel farm. This is something that's going to be mandated in June of 23. I was able to appease the inspector by telling her that, well, we're working right now on trying to get a new fuel farm. If we get the new fuel farm at the airport, then it will already have this mandated shutoff system on it. So that's where we are on our 139 inspection. Most of the items were in compliant now, but some were not, and the ones that we're not, we're going to have to spend some money on to get to be compliant.
Any further questions?
In past inspections, is this indicative of they're always going to find something?
They're always going to find multiple things. They don't leave until they can write you up on several items. So, like the debris on the runway, I left as an obvious item because, well, that's a good thing for them to see, and then I could get out and take care of it immediately. But oh yeah, they spend 3 days there, and they go over the airport with a fine-tooth comb, and they go through all your training records, and they're just looking for something to write you up on.
Do you have any idea of costs on all the signs?
It's going to be expensive.
It's a six-figure cost. I don't want to tell the numbers, I don't know,
Okay,
but it's not cheap.
okay.
I think every one of those signs is about at least $4,000 a piece. So if we take care of the signage and the expensive one's going to be the snow removal equipment.
With the signs, as Lee had said, you have 4 different types of signs. So it's not just the curve of the sign, it's not just the light bulb, it's the electronic components inside. Some of which you probably can't even find the motherboards for them anymore unless they're on a shelf. So fixing the ones that are or the oldest or most damaged or worn out, significantly cheaper, but then you're still stuck with the same long-term maintenance problems versus updating everything to a singular method. It's the cost-benefit analysis. Example, if you have 4 tires and 2 of them go bad, you replace all 4 tires, or you just replace the 2 that are bad. It's a cost-benefit analysis.
Depends on your budget.
And a lot of it is determined by the funding that we're able to get,
Yes.
because it's not trivial that we could, to the point of us being able to take care of it ourselves. It's whatever the FAA will approve us bundling with something else.
That's always interesting because the cert inspectors, they say, well, these are eligible for an FAA grant. Granted, they are, but the 139 people don't write the grants for us. They only write us up on items of noncompliance. Our ADO actually writes the grant, and if they don't determine that to be a high priority item, we don't get the funding for it. So, catch-22 there.
So one last follow-up. I'm just intrigued when she said, the inspector said, I don't like the 45-degree angle on the arrow. I think it should be a 90-degree.
Yeah.
Is there a code section that changed from last year's inspection?
She went back and looked up her code. She said, I will get back with you on this item. I don't think that is compliant, the angle going at that direction.
It used to be compliant.
Yeah.
And
So
it's, and
something's
those,
changed.
But they changed that. I mean, you get changes in your advisory circulars all the time with the FAA. They have people there that all they do is just change things. We used to have stencil where we could go in and repaint the markings on our hold lines, or the red square with the runway indicator markings. And no sooner did we pay for all that stencils than they changed the size of the font and the size of the square, so your stencils were no good anymore because the FAA decided they wanted to make a change.
And the other thing I struggle a little bit with is, it's in their opinion that our snow removal equipment doesn't work. Last year it was fine, at 49 years old. At 50 years old, it doesn't work. To
Well,
me, it's
she goes
interesting.
over maintenance records, and when she sees the amount of money we're spending on maintenance, then she starts to question the reliability of the vehicles.
okay, thank you, Lee.
Okay.
The state went through an extensive study and did an economic impact analysis of every airport as well as their entire system. And Jeannie has graciously consented to review the economic impact study for Logan-Cache. She participated in the State Aviation or Aeronautics Conference, and we're glad to have her do this. New joints included.
Yeah, new joints included, is right. The UDOT is the one who did the study, and they analyzed the economic impacts of all the airports in Utah. And they determined that the Logan-Cache Airport creates 194 jobs, and it has an annual payroll overall of $4.5 million and an annual spending of $13.2 million. And our annual economic activity for the airport is $17.7 million. We generate $639,300 in state and local tax revenue. And we have an $8.6 million 10-year development cost estimate. They figure it will cost $8.6 million to improve the airport, which translates into an $860,070 annual investment needed. But that will create $17.7 million in annual economic benefit to the entire valley. It says, did you know Logan-Cache Airport creates 64 on-airport jobs, 22 jobs through capital investment, and 17 off-airport jobs from visitors. And as John has said in the past, 70% of the flight plans that are created at Logan-Cache Airport are for out-of-state destinations. And those connections are to more than 230 unique destinations in 41 states and 8 countries. So we have a very wide range of benefit from the airport. In addition to that, I would say that we are one of the airports that is creating a higher economic impact than some of the other ones in the state. Of course, not Salt Lake, probably not Provo anymore. But this airport has an increasingly valuable role with respect to air ambulance, with respect to firefighting, and with respect to, sorry, I'm trying to have it all in my head, and I don't have it all in my head. But we have some unique things that those in particular, plus the flight school, is a tremendous economic driver for both the economy in the valley and outside of the valley, because we're pushing pilots. Sadly, we lost one trainer and a student, but we are creating pilots in an economy that desperately needs them. So that impact should not be undervalued at all. But other than that, I think that all the numbers sound really big and wonderful and all of that. But I think we need to remember that we have jets coming in and out of the Logan-Cache Airport on a daily basis that are bringing individuals in for business and taking them out for business. We have regular package delivery that comes in and out. We have football players and basketball players that come in and out. And our airport, and a lot of the credit goes to Lee for being the one-man show, so to speak, functions in a highly efficient way and creates a lot of benefit for this whole community. And I think we need to never forget that part. Sometimes we get bogged down in the costs, and it does cost a lot to run an airport. I know that Provo just spent millions.
45.
How many?
45.
45, I was gonna say 45, I couldn't remember for sure. Provo just spent $45 million upgrading their airport. And now they have 2 airlines that are acting a little squirrely. Hopefully they're really flying out of the airport. But I know Ogden is gonna suffer because Allegiant has, one airline pulled out and Allegiant has cut a lot of their flights. And that's gonna be, that translates into a really, that is an economic challenge for the communities that are trying to grow their airport and grow their economic reach. And we've been careful, and I know we're doing our long-range plan again, and I think we need to consider where this airport can go in the next 10 to 20 years, because it's going to become an increasingly important economic driver for what goes on in the valley. And I don't know if you saw the news yesterday. Logan was ranked #1 of cities that are good for small business, for starting a small business. So
#1 in the nation.
#1 in the nation. So that bodes well for us. It was a Verizon study, so I don't know exactly how much weight we put on that, but we'll take a #1 anytime. So anybody have any questions about that? It's just sort of a short overview. Does that work for you, John?
That's great.
And it was really fun to be at the conference. I was there was a guy there that was also, that knew about airports but was also in politics, and then there was a guy who knew a lot about he'd flown in a lot of airplanes. So he had funny stories, and the guy in the middle was sort of comical as well, and then there was me. So it was really quite fun.
The bloom among the thorns.
I know, I don't know about that, but it was fun.
This report in its entirety is available on our airport website. We're going to continue to push that. Russ is going to get a blurb, for lack of a better term, out to all of the elected officials in the county, and we want to continue to promote the information that's provided in this report to make the entire county more familiar with what the airport actually accomplishes.
Well, and I think they need to become more aware of the impact that the airport has on their individual economies as well,
Yeah,
community.
and
Did you say that information is on our website?
On the airport website.
It is? I was just looking for it, because I was gonna ask for a copy, but if it's on there already.
and I think you got a copy in your agenda packet.
There's an attachment that I sent to you as part of your packet.
Couldn't find that either.
The entire study is also available on UDOT Aeronautics website.
And that's in two forms. It's individual for each airport, plus
Collective.
an executive review, which summarizes the entire impact of the airport network in Utah to the state's economy.
I'd give you mine, David, but it's in black and white, and it's really in bright colors. It's
Okay.
better to look at that way.
Find it on here, if Janine sent it out.
Mr. Koch, why don't you come forward and tell us where we are on the process and review, a thumbnail review of what we're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, bet. You have a HDMI cords? See if that connects here. There we go. So just a quick review for those of you who were not here in June. We talked about an FAA grant proposal that is for zero-emission vehicles. Maybe just in the way of introduction, Electric Power Systems is a company that is adjacent to the airport out here. We're working with Utah State and trying to build all-electric aircraft, at least the power systems for all-electric aircraft. A company moved here from California in 2016. We just put up our headquarters out by the airport about 2 years ago, and we're growing pretty rapidly. We probably added 50, 60 headcount this year, and plan to, our long-term expansion by 2030 has us at 2,000 to 3,000 employees. So a lot of growth, and that's primarily from being in the right place at the right time. We're kind of in pole position right now to provide all-electric power to the dozens and dozens of companies that are trying to build all-electric aircraft. So these are a few of the aircraft that have flown with our systems, demonstrators and prototypes, and the bottom, the X-Wing fighter, was over Disneyland, Star Wars World when they opened that up. Really got our start with the NASA X-57 all-electric distributed plane. And really what we see in the near term, the next 5 years, as being viable for electric aircraft are fixed-wing trainers. These will be able to fly up to 60 minutes, complete a training mission. The vertical takeoff and landing, all-electric vertical takeoff and landing market, which you've heard about, really urban air mobility. This is something that will probably be certified and come online. I mean, people talk about next year, but I'm thinking 3 years from now is probably more realistic. Then longer term, maybe 5 years out, are regional thin hauls. And there's a number of companies working on these, Hart Aerospace, Regent Aircraft, that can do 60 minutes of flight for a much larger thin haul type application. What we're focused on right now, we have dozens of different projects in the works, but kind of the forefront is this partnership that we've created, a teaming agreement with Diamond Aircraft out of Austria. We're working with them to create an electric DA-40. The idea there would be DA-40 is what Utah State primarily flies, Utah Valley University as well. But we would replace the IC engine with a Safran electric motor. Safran is an investor in our company, and we would put in a belly pod with enough battery power to fly for 90 minutes. Reduce flight costs up to 40%, quieter, zero emissions. Part of this is getting the infrastructure in place to facilitate this. So we're working with Utah State to be one of the pilot sites for when these aircraft come off the production line. So right now, Diamond is scheduled to certify the first aircraft by the end of 2023, probably have units out beginning of 2024. And so having the infrastructure in place to fly these aircraft is important. This is kind of an overview of what we are working on. We have projects to build an overnight charger that would also be a diagnostics capacity test unit that would allow us to maintain flight worthiness. We have a project for a mobile microgrid. That's the trucks that you see in the picture here. And then a DC fast charger program, and then some energy storage and whatnot. But this is kind of what our proposal for the Logan-Cache Airport Authority Board is centered around, is getting the FAA grant to put this initial electric fuel truck, what we call a mobile microgrid, on the airport with its corresponding charger. So this thing would charge on a DC fast charger, 150 kilowatt DC fast charger, and that would be prepped with energy storage banks also. So one of the things that we would like to do in the longer term, 2 or 3 years after initial installation, the batteries will need to be replaced, but they'll still be at 70–80% capacity. We can take those batteries and put them in a energy storage cabinet, and then use that to charge overnight, and then distribute the high voltage power throughout the day to reduce the cost of fleet operations. So, in the way that was kind of in the way of introductions, more specifically to the zero emissions vehicle infrastructure pilot program. This is not a new program. This was originally written for airports that want to convert their ground vehicles, IC engine, diesel engines, to all electric vehicles. We looked at this and thought this might be applicable to the mobile microgrid vehicle that we want to put in place. A couple of things, if you read through the requirements, there's eligibility for the vehicles, and there's eligibility for the charging infrastructure. A few key considerations for the vehicles is that the vehicles must be owned or leased by the Logan-Cache Airport Authority. The application would be from the Logan-Cache Airport Authority Board. Can't be resold or leased. Need to be eligible for, so the airport must be eligible for AIP grants, which I think is not an issue. The electric power systems, our mobile microgrid is currently not commercially available. Our first demonstrator prototype is slated to be done at the end of this year. We're taking it to Oshkosh the end of this month, kind of to show off and demonstrate, but we would have that available by the time this grant was approved. So the one note here is in the thing, the sponsor needs to show that the type of vehicle has been tested by the Federal Vehicle Testing Facility. I don't think that's an issue. We will build this on a platform, on a all-electric platform, and we'll just need to make sure that that is a vehicle that's been tested by that facility and complies there. There's also a Made in America compliance thing. We would need to make sure that the components we source and the truck is compliant with the Made in America standards. On the recharging station, a couple things. This is not an issue. Number of charging stations limited to the number of project vehicles right now. I think what we would propose is one vehicle, one charging station. Installation costs for the charging stations are limited to the lowest cost alternative, so we need to do a comparative value engineering analysis, and then there's this somewhat subjective statement in there about must charge a reasonable fee for the service. So I'm assuming reasonable means that you can maintain and pay for and recoup get a return on investment for what you're paying, but not necessarily gouge Utah State or any other people that want to charge. The selection criteria is something we probably want to discuss with the FAA. Basically, they indicate that priority is given to the greatest air quality benefits per dollar of funding, which we may not stack up very well on that comparison if you only consider the reduction in emissions from a truck. But if we can talk with them and convince them that the reduction in emissions from flying fewer airplanes that are burning 8 to 10 gallons of avgas per hour is facilitated by this, then we would probably float to the top of the comparative list. So that's something we need to talk about. The other thing is the grant is 90% FAA, so that we need to find a 10% match. We talked a little bit about the Aeronautics Division of UDOT. If it's possible from private companies, then EP Systems would be interested in funding that as well. So that's something we'd need to talk with the FAA and clarify. The application process is kind of their overview of the application process. What they recommend is calling the FAA or communicating with the FAA and talking with the regional office or the district office prior to submitting the pre-application. So the process is basically there's a 2 to 3 page pre-application. It's reviewed. If it's approved, you submit a full application. If that's approved, then you get the funding. And so that recommendation is that we would talk with the FAA prior to that. And then the pre-application is due in November, so the time frame for pre-application is November 1st is the deadline for the annual fundings, and then pre-applications would be decided upon by Q1 of 2023. So there's a little bit of time we have, but and there's the contact information for how we would reach out to the FAA. Maybe just really quick, we have drafted up an initial 2 to 3 page plus actually a draft of a full document, but this would be basically what a pre-application could look like, describing what the intent would be. We still need to sharpen our pencils on the monetary ask. It's probably on the order of $1 million. The vehicle itself would have nearly $500,000 of lithium-ion batteries on board, plus all the electronic equipment and charging equipment, and then the installation and the so we've quoted out so far a 1600 amp service. I think Cache Valley Electric is waiting to get back on from one of their excavators, but I think we have some pretty good numbers shaping up there. So this is something that we could refine and submit, and then we have kind of a broader, fuller application, which we detail out kind of the broader vision of what we would like to do at the airport with Utah State and other adopters of all electric aircraft, vertical takeoff and landing in the future, and some of the impacts that would have on the environment and noise reduction and so on and so forth. So that I think we have a good head start on what that application could look like. The next steps would then be, in this month, the next month, if the authority board is interested in doing this, would like to do this, I think the next steps would be to reach out to the FAA and discuss the proposal. We could use the draft that we have right now as kind of a straw man to discuss with them. After their feedback, refine the proposal in September, October, submit the pre-application, and then see what we hear back. So that's kind of where we're at on that grant proposal.
I have a question about the match. It does sound like maybe it would be a little more difficult for us to be competitive if it's based on the air quality impact. I'm just wondering if maybe they would allow a higher match to make that work. Maybe that could be a question you could ask them.
Yeah, I think that would be a great discussion point with them. They do have some language in the guidance that says, you know, you can pay for the charger, the vehicle, or, so, you know, I think there is room for that discussion. I think they would be amenable to maybe EPS pays for some of the batteries, you know, or something like that. And then we can get the cost-benefit ratio up higher. But I think there is a strong case to be made for, you know, we're going to be converting this number of aircraft in this time frame and the emission savings. And, you know, if you're looking at the spirit of what they're trying to do here with the zero emissions vehicle, it's a pretty compelling story.
I agree. Thanks.
Yeah.
Item number 1, would you be comfortable holding with you having that conversation with the FAA because of your familiarity with the project?
Yeah, absolutely. We'd be happy to support that. I think it would be, you know, a conversation that would be good to have initiated by somebody from the Airport Authority Board, but we could be there and just introduce ourselves as consultants, you know, and help facilitate that discussion and the direction it goes and any questions that might come up.
One of the first requirements that you put up there said that the equipment needed to be owned by the airport.
Yeah.
So how does this program transition to where the airport wouldn't own any of the aircraft?
Well, the aircraft would be owned by Utah State, or, you know, if somebody wanted to bring in 3 years from now a eVTOL platform, you know, to fly to Ogden or Salt Lake or whatever. The aircraft themselves would be owned by the operator. The airport would own the infrastructure, and then they would charge per kilowatt hour fee as people recharged using the infrastructure to maintain and update the equipment.
So would you go back to that first slide? And I won't beat this to death, but I just want to make sure I understand right. Right there, whoops, right there. No, the next one down.
I'll just go here.
So it says well, go down one more. No, you had it right there. Right there. That had it as well, sorry. So the vehicle must be owned or leased by the airport authority.
Yes.
To me, they're targeting that snow removal. Lee is gonna go buy an all-electric snow removal. That makes sense to me. I understand what this program would be applying to. You're going one step removed from that.
Yes. Yeah, and I think an all-electric snow removal piece of equipment would fit into this grant also.
Yeah.
For example, yeah.
Okay, what I'd like to know is what the truck can we get to a station to come to, so the truck would be less expensive at first to do the infrastructure for the charging station, and then not have a mobile truck, because we don't have that much going on for the mobile truck to go around yet.
Except-
But all the vehicles can go to that charging station.
Except the grants for vehicles.
Way cheaper to put the money into the infrastructure, into the charging station first, and then get the truck moving.
Except the grants for a vehicle.
I believe the grant also allows for the charging infrastructure for the vehicles.
Right.
So it is for the vehicles, but it's also for the charging.
Okay, that's the piece I'm missing. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the highlights, this is the highlights, not the.
Yeah, I think.
That comes with it.
No, that's a good point. I mean, I think you bring up a good point. You know, I think initially an operator would probably install a DC fast charger, and when they get one plane or two planes, they would start using that to charge. The mobile microgrid becomes more compelling once you have 8 planes, 10 planes, and you maybe want to run over to Brigham City or to Pocatello to charge a plane that some student didn't keep an eye on the charge and they end up landing over there. So you go rescue or additional support or logistics on the airport. I think the mobile microgrid is, in our mind, slated for broader adoption later on. But this particular grant is targeted towards vehicles and the infrastructure to charge those vehicles. So I'm not sure that you could do the infrastructure without the vehicles, but if the cost of the mobile microgrid is prohibitive, or it couldn't be shared or whatnot, you could potentially get there also by getting an all-electric snow removal piece of equipment and have them pay for that and the charger, and then you could use the DC fast charger also for planes and mobile microgrids. I think there's a lot of different ways this could potentially go if we have a discussion with the FAA.
And Lee, do we have any chargers out there right now?
I don't think there's airport in Utah.
Yeah, there is only one all-electric aircraft that's available, the Pipistrel Velis Electro, which is made in Slovenia, somewhat popular. It's a light sport that's been around for a couple years now. It's EASA certified. FAA has not certified it, but in the coming 5 years, there's probably going to be half a dozen or more all-electric vehicles, and that'll just continue to grow as time goes.
I do know of a charging station in Nephi for the cars.
Yeah, and I've talked with a lot of airports. Ogden got an FAA grant a while back, and part of their expansion program is they're putting in a 4 megawatt electric loop, and they've already put in infrastructure in the ramp with conduit so that they're ready to supply electric power to high voltage power to vehicles. So.
It's clear that we're not playing catch up.
Yeah, this is cutting edge. Logan-Cache Airport could literally be the first airport in the world to fly operations on all electric aircraft. It would be pretty cool. A lot of publicity. It would be a good
Economic driver.
for sure. Yeah.
Just a circle.
Any further questions? Any reason why we should not continue to support EPS and their efforts?
Nope, not by my mind.
Well, good. Then for next step, maybe I'll circle back with you, and we'll make arrangements to reach out to the FAA and start that discussion.
What type of grant are we looking at? This is in the regular CIP grant.
No, this is an individually funded program.
Is it going to have to be monthly submittals through the e-invoicing network?
It will likely go to the Delphi.
So that's going to put all the burden of getting payment on the airport manager and following up on all the submittals.
Just like any other grant.
John, I have to leave at 9:30, so I just want to let you know.
Okay, you're going to miss the excitement.
And I'm going to get a couple minutes of it.
Okay. Union Pacific,
Yes.
to be specific.
I think they blow a lot of wind.
Thank you for scheduling some time to talk about this issue. So on June 30th, we received a letter from Union Pacific, kind of a nasty gram, about how our lease that we had with Union Pacific Railroad, it's a strip of land next to their railroad that we maintain a fence on, that began in 2001 and expired June 30th, 2021. And we have not vacated the premises. And in the lease, it says in Section 15A of the lease, it gives a couple of options. If we remain on the property, if we maintain structures on the property after the lease expires, Union Pacific has the option of either taking down the fence or taking title to the fence, or alternatively keeping us on as a holdover tenant, an at-will holdover tenant until our structure is removed. Now, what that means is due to this previous agreement, we are on the hook for future lease payments, reasonable lease payments. But there is room to argue about what the market rate and what the reasonable amount is for that lease payment. Union Pacific, their preferred terms would be that for the period between July 1st, 2021 and June 30, 2022, we pay the lesser a fixed rent of $61,600 for that year. And then as of July 1st, 2022, that we pay a fixed rent of $5,450 monthly. So they wanted to increase our rent significantly. Previously, we were paying $15,000 for 20 years for this piece of property. Now, this is a substantial increase, and on further consultation with our engineer, there are several reasons that we have to contest this amount. So generally, holdover tenants are on the hook for a reasonable market rate of rent. Now, what market rate is depends upon the value of the land, and it seems that Union Pacific likely took a similar measurement from a commercial industrial zoned land nearby, but the difference is this piece of land, due to zoning laws and due to an irrigation easement that we have, cannot be developed on, and no structures can be built there apart from this fence. So the only reasonable use that it has is to be just empty space for them to continue to run their railroad. Now, so that leaves us with a couple of options. So option number one, since we are on the hook for the lease until our structures are removed, option number one is to move the fence. This would incur significant expense. Moving the fence would be very expensive. It's like 10,000 feet long on that property line, so it would be probably north of $500,000, probably $1 million to move the fence and have a good quality fence that's tall enough for our purposes. So we have significant motivation to keep the fence where it is. However, we obviously want to come to a more equitable solution on what rent is appropriate for this property. I have already drafted a first draft of a response to their demand letter. That's going to go through another couple of iterations, but we should have that in a week or two to be able to send back and restart these negotiations on what constitutes a reasonable amount for the market rate for this rent. So we have a couple of our arguments that we have, like I alluded to, was the fact that we have these, the zoning and the easement have significantly decreased the value of this property. Secondly, what they're charging for the lease of that land. So Union Pacific has a 66-foot right-of-way through that land. Our fence only is actually a couple feet into that 66 feet, so we don't actually occupy the full strip of land. So if we actually only take the amount of land that we need, the 15 or so feet into their territory, 15 by 10,000 feet, it ends up being only a couple of acres. And so one of our options that we could offer is possibly purchasing that strip from them. And the other option, we are definitely going to highlight the fact that we only need part of that land and that we only want to pay a lease amount for that piece that we actually need, that we don't want to pay full freight on that entire strip just for this tiny strip that we need. So that's kind of the state of where we are now, getting that draft together, refining that draft and sending it out to come to a more reasonable solution long-term.
I believe there was some question of whether the boundary lines was in fact where they were stating it was. Is that not correct?
That's
They
correct.
were claiming to
Right.
have more property than actually they do.
Yes, so just south of that point, Union Pacific has a 200-foot wide strip, but the section next to the airport is actually only 66 feet wide. So our fence goes in onto their property significantly less than they are alleging. So we're renting quite a bit less land from them.
And for whatever reason, the original lease was for the entire railroad right-of-way,
Correct.
and not just that portion which we were
Right.
encumbering.
And given the cost, it wasn't extremely detrimental. It wasn't super important. But since they are now pushing the cost and, want us to pay the same rate as, an Amazon distribution center built on commercial land, since they're now pushing the issue, it's now coming more and more to the forefront that we need to specify that, no, we don't want to pay for the entire strip. We only need this tiny 15-foot by 10,000-foot strip along the side. So that should decrease our cost and decrease their evaluation significantly.
Further questions?
Have we actually spoken with them, or has our correspondence just been letters?
The correspondence has just been,
We have it all documented. They didn't get back to me, they claim I didn't get back to them, but I've got it documented the times that we were able to speak. And basically, they let a year and a half lapse between the first time that they reached out, notifying me that we'd have to renew this lease. Of course, that was during COVID too, so I don't know. I tried to make numerous calls to their office in Nebraska, and then I did get one email saying that they were trying to call me, and this was during the time that the county was changing our phone numbers, and so they had the wrong number. I did give them my correct number, and then I got an email from them, but then they let another period of about a year lapse before we got the final notice saying that we had to make back payment on last year for not renewing the lease.
yes, so there is some question on both sides about playing some phone tag and sending notices that may not have been effective. So, but in any case, we're prepared now to negotiate and move forward.
Do we have condemnation authority?
So it gets tricky with the railroad because there's lots of federal restrictions and regulations on the railroad. So our ability to act as a county, I don't have an exact answer for you, but it would most likely be significantly reduced.
And you're saying if the county were to do that, or the airport authority? Would it be the same?
Either.
Yeah, I think we should try to sit down with them and talk through these issues, even if it's over the phone, through Zoom, if they're in Omaha. I'd be happy to participate as a representative of the county and the airport authority, if you think that would be helpful.
Great.
I like your approach of narrowing the scope of the lease to just the land that we're using and making sure that the comparable valuation is there. Maybe we could even get some information from our assessor's office about the value, maybe an official document from them that would show what the value might be.
Sure, especially considering the fact that due to zoning restrictions and due to previous easements for the air above it, that it's essentially non-developable, so.
Yeah, because they should have already an assessment of this land and what its value is. Maybe that would be helpful as well.
Great, I can reach out to Kathleen.
One question. We've been mowing that, maintaining it. What is your suggestion we do for the time being?
I would continue to maintain it.
We maintain the entire piece,
Up
or
to the fence.
just up to the fence?
If there are no other questions, thank you.
Gives you a reason to come to work in the morning. Any other items to bring before the board this morning? We appreciate your interest and your participation. We'll stand adjourned.